Hoop fans all across community. Check in, never know who you'll see. Subscribe and like, you know the deal. Real life on Mike Jeremy Mills.
Alrighty, and my guest today, I'm very excited to have him joining me. It is the head trainer at the Ventura Basketball Academy in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's Vaughn Compton. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me, Jeremy. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on and kind of welcoming me to the Arizona basketball scene. I spent a lot of time.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I spent a lot of time in Seattle, interviewing people, getting to know people, and just being like granted some cool access to see kind of the inner workings of how a basketball culture kind of works and how Seattle has stayed, so on top of the game. And, as far as putting people out, players out, and just having a great community and culture. So I think what I found there was they had a real pride, the people that made it, to pull the next person up, to find that next person that's trying to make it, give them a hand, pull them up, help them, mentor them, which takes a lot of work. If like kind of thinking in that way, if you had to describe the Arizona basketball scene or the Phoenix basketball scene, kind of how would you describe it to someone who's new?
It's on the rise. It's definitely on the rise. You're seeing an emergence of more high profile players, more players getting into college, on scholarships to play, of course. There's more pros. It's really growing. I grew up playing AAU ball in Phoenix, and there used to be maybe 2-3 like legit programs. Now there's a lot of them, so it's growing for the better. You're seeing a lot of prep schools emerge, which they have a roster full of talent, and they're competing on a national level, sometimes even being in the top 10 in the country. So it's exciting. I mean, there's a lot of kids that are moving here. They're not necessarily born and raised in Phoenix, but that's how it works.
Mm-hmm. And so it's cool that you got to see it from both sides, where it was not as, because right now it's a hotbed. The thing I knew about it before was like, all right, Marjan moved here. It's a hotbed. There's a lot of great players around here. We'll talk about Nico later. But just, it's a hotbed for recruiting. So you kind of got to see it before that happened. What do you think the difference is now? Is there people that have made it kind of pouring back into it, or is it just growth over time?
There is a lot of people that in the basketball community that are giving back, that are dedicating their lives to helping these players, mentoring these players on and off the court. There are program directors that have committed so much time to reaching out to college coaches and different scouting services, trying to that have basically provided the resources that these players need to get to the next level. They didn't have that. They had a few guys back in the day. I know, like a guy named Anthony Ray was pretty heavy with a lot of the top players getting, looks into college. And now there's, Anthony kind of paved the way for a lot of these other guys to come in and provide those resources to all the players. So it's a great thing, man. I wish I would have been growing up playing in this era, but now I'm one of those guys that pretty much commits to these players, dedicates all my time to helping them. So, I'm one of the guys that's allowing it to be on the rise amongst other guys as well.
It takes a community of people like you who, yes, like having basketball as your job is awesome and fun and everything, but then there's also like this deeper meaning, like you're talking about, like helping people move forward and mentoring them and helping the culture move forward, which helps, the greater good of what basketball can do for people in so many different ways. So do you think not having that as much growing up kind of shaped how you do it now, or like the inspiration you have to do it now?
Yeah, I mean, it's an exciting thing to I mean, I think it kind of, the AAU world, just the age of AAU basketball is older now. I think it's just, it's evolving, right? And I think it's only going to get better, assuming that everybody keeps doing things the right way. So I definitely think back to growing up in my childhood, and there weren't trainers. There were maybe your AAU coach or high school coach that would dedicate, maybe take 15, 30 minutes out of their day and just help you get up shots. But it's nothing like now. And obviously the game's evolved as far as the movements that players are doing now, the different types of dribbling moves. Basketball is like a science now, and it's all about analytics. And you could break down someone's film. I mean, I've been to coaches clinics where we've spent 45 minutes and we discussing like 3 possessions. I mean, you're watching 30 seconds of film and you're discussing it for 45 minutes. And that's one of the things I love about the game, is you could break it down like that. And that's how I've been able to be successful as I've been, by being detail oriented.
But you can, from the surface of someone who doesn't watch basketball to someone like you, it's like they're watching a totally different thing. They see it in a totally different way,
Absolutely.
Which I love watching basketball with people who never watch it. Sometimes it's an interesting perspective. But you mentioned Anthony Ray. Who are some other pillars kind of in the community who have led the way, and maybe, I don't say oversee the community, but those pillars in the community who paved the way to lead,
I mean, there's this guy, John Ortega, who, I mean, he probably has put more players in and gotten them more college scholarship offers than anyone else in the state. He's tremendous at what he does. He's the first guy that pops to mind. And I might be a bit biased because I coached for a little bit in his AAU program, and he actually used to coach an AAU team in the very beginning that I used to play against all the time, the Arizona Saints. And he's grown tremendously, but he does a damn good job. He's literally in his office at this place called The Facility. He's in his office just on the phone constantly, calling this coach, calling that coach. Like, he has a list of all of his players on a board, like almost like this, not like a depth chart prioritizing ones, but he has a list of all of them, and he just goes through that list and tries to get them off the board and get them opportunities. It's pretty incredible.
And that facility, like even the place, it's named The Facility, but the facility itself is amazing. I got to see just part of it, and I've never seen anything like that before in my life. It's a basketball sanctuary. The way it's set up, it's amazing. So, John Ortega, okay,
yeah.
Who are the schools? The like local powerhouse schools, and that'll probably lead kind of us into your journey and where you went to high school as well.
Man, things are the landscape is really changing. Like I said earlier, there are prep schools that are emerging, and a lot of the players that were going to the public high schools are now playing for the prep schools. And, that's a whole conversation that I don't want to get too deep into it as to why. And I mean, there's pluses and minuses, and I try to see things from a neutral perspective. But there are definitely some public high schools around the Valley that you pretty much see them in the state quarter finals, semifinals, or say finals every year. For boys and girls, you see, I mean, the past few years, I mean, Pinnacle High School, Mountain Point High School, Desert Vista, Brophy High School, Gilbert High School. You know, there's a lot of them. On the girls' side, you got like Millennium, you know, Pinnacle. Who are some? There's a few others, but yeah, it's interesting the way things are shifting, and a lot of these players they'll go to their like public school for academics, but then they won't participate on the basketball team. They'll go to their prep team practice, and then some of the guys are doing their academic portions like at the actual prep school and basketball as well. So it's interesting how things are evolving here.
So I had done some research and saw, you know, you went to Mesa Mountain View High School in Mesa, Arizona, which is that a local powerhouse is what I'm reading correct?
I mean, they're really, really well coached. Coach Ernst is going to go down as a legend in Arizona. And I mean, I think it was LeBron's senior year in high school. Coach Ernst was chosen as a McDonald's All-American coach. I mean, they had, like my year, we were back-to-back state champions. The year after I left, they won another state championship. And then in the early 2000s, I think they went back-to-back as well. They had tremendous success. But yeah, Coach Ernst is incredible, man.
Yeah. What do you remember first thing about, you know, playing for him and what made him so special as a coach?
First thing was our defense was so strong. It was so strong. You know, he's extremely detail oriented and he was a perfectionist with it. You know, if you minimize mistakes and if you get stops, you're going to be able to be in any game. And I mean, our teams, when I played, we had multiple guys that went and played Division I. So talent wise, we were loaded. But even in other years that he was coaching, they may have had one, maybe two guys that went on to play at the next level. And the other guys didn't. Like varsity was as far as they went. And you would see them in the game at the end of games with these teams that were just stacked. And you're just you watch them in warmups and you're like, okay, they're gonna 20 piece them. Like this is I don't even know if I'll stay for this game. And then halftime, it's like they're up by 4, comes down to the last 2 minutes, and it's just, you know. So he's kind of an old school style of coaching, but it's proven to be very effective.
If you had to describe his style of coaching, like what makes him great, there's a lot of different aspects to coaching, whether it's, you know, the basketball stuff, the connecting with people stuff, the, you know, managing a staff, whatever that, you know, may be. What do you think made that particular, you know, you mentioned his attention to detail.
Yeah.
And being able to explain that to his players, maybe.
Yeah. He does what works and he trusts it. I think a lot of coaches, if they don't get immediate results, then they're constantly trying to make changes to their system. And you know, Coach Ernst everything we did was consistent. It wasn't easy, but it was like simple. And you just do it every day, do it well. And you know, I kind of have adopted the same mentality with training. You know, it's just consistency, just trusting the process, and keep it simple. That's one way that I've evolved as a trainer. When I first got into the training world, there's a guy, Micah Lancaster, who's, in my opinion, one of the best skills trainers on the planet. And he was a huge, huge inspiration to me. I remember going to see one of his camps in Sacramento, and I watched him teach the game and explain everything he was doing in such great detail. And like, I came back to Phoenix and I couldn't sleep for like 2 days. I was so excited. I'd never seen the game broken down in such detail. And I've never looked at the game in that light. And for anyone that knows him, he has a very, very innovative style of training where a lot of people might, you know, point fingers at him and say like, oh, you don't need cones. You don't need training toys and tools. Like, you don't need that to be, you know, to develop your game. And, you know, I disagree. I think you need to have an open mind when it comes to players' development. And I think the difference between him and a lot of other trainers that attempt to do what he does is not only can he do it and actually demonstrate it at a really high level, but he could explain every single detail of it. You know, he could have a cone on the ground and he can go between the legs and pick up the cone and explain how you're working on dropping your hips and having specific footwork and getting your shoulder down to shield, kind of protect the ball. And when you grab the cone, you're working on having an active offhand to protect your dribble. And, you know, a lot of people that do that kind of stuff just see it as a gimmick. But when you could break it down and understand it at the level that he does, it's very effective. And it's funny because Nico, when he first started training with me, when he was about 13, we did a lot of that stuff. And, you know, he's able to get so low with the ball in his hand. And I think a lot of that has to do with the years of picking up cones off the ground and tennis balls for the coordination and motor skills, you know. So that's definitely, he's definitely was a huge inspiration to me.
You won back-to-back state championships, from what I read, under Coach Ernst. What led up to that? Like, from even like what got you interested in the game to what made you take it serious enough to get to that point as a high school player?
Well, I transferred to Mesa Mountain View. My situation at the high school that I went to prior to that wasn't ideal. It was something that I discussed with my parents and for many, many weeks. And we agreed that it was the right move. Mesa Mountain View is also a very high academic school. So, you know, I ended up transferring there because of the basketball culture
and
also because of the academics. It was after my sophomore year.
Okay.
Yeah. So the rules back then were if you transfer, you have to sit out a year. So that was hard for me, but I got to practice and compete every single day. So it was, even though I lost a year, it was still worth it to be part of something great, you know, and to be able to practice against, you know, guys every single day that are playing at the next level. So, but yeah, I really wish that I had the same resources that players do now. Like, I talk to friends of mine that I grew up playing AU ball with, and we like say the same thing. Like, it's crazy how the game's evolved, and like there's trainers now. Like, I wish we had a trainer back then. I mean, back then it was like, if you went between the legs cross, you were fancy. Like, ooh, ah. And, you know, you kind of glorified guys like Jason Williams, Steve Nash, kind of the flashier players. And really everything we learned was from watching them on TV. We didn't have Instagram. I don't know what year YouTube came into play, but, you know, I wasn't looking up YouTube videos and using that as a resource to work on my game. It was just a love for the game. And you really had to have that awareness level where you could watch other players and then go home and practice that move hundreds and hundreds of times. So it's now, like, players ask me all the time. They'll message me on social media, and, you know, I try to help them out as much as I can, but sometimes they ask like pretty loaded questions like, hey, what could I do to improve my shot? And it's like, ugh, like that's a lot. Like I could probably do a 2-week clinic on that. It's kind of hard to put that in a message, but I always tell them, like, go on YouTube and go watch 20 different videos, take notes, and then kind of come up with what you feel like is going to be the best fit for you. And you could say the same thing for ball handling, for pick and roll, for finishing. I mean, the resources these days it's insane. Even player development coaches like myself, we utilize those resources through podcasts, Instagram videos, YouTube. And we learn from them all the time.
How do you not get the kids to take that for granted, that access to information and that access to trainers and everything like that? Do you think they take it for granted? Maybe they don't.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of players that say they want it, but I think there's fewer players that crave it, that need it. Like, those are the players that are going to be able to continue to evolve and play at the next level and really achieve their goals. I ask myself that all the time. Like, why don't you guys do this? Why don't you use all these resources that you have? Like, it's crazy, but then I'm like, I'm kind of like a detail oriented psycho. So it maybe they just, they have a different mentality and they don't crave it and wake up every morning like they're behind in the race and like, I need to get better. I have to get better. It's an addiction almost, right? And so you just keep providing the resources for those guys and keep telling them, hey, this is what you should do, and it's up to them to make the right choices. That's like one thing I learned from a great basketball mind, this guy Larry Greer, years ago when I sat down with him for lunch. He said, listen to the right voices and make the right choices. So some guys figure it out at an early age and take advantage of it, and other guys don't. But at the end of the day, you can't really force someone to change. You can't make choices for them. They have to do it on their own.
And then thinking about, after high school, but before college, you had 3 consecutive ACL tears and then surgeries. Is that right?
Yeah. 4 now total, not ACL. I have had 3 ACLs and 1 meniscus.
Okay.
But it was tough. So I was going to go to Western State of Colorado, which was a D2 school in Colorado. And after we won a state championship at Mesa Mountain View my senior year, I was at an open gym and I ended up tearing my ACL. And I chose to stay home and get surgery in Phoenix and rehab here and then bounce back. And, the scholarship and the player personnel, things changed. So I looked to go to Nova Southeastern University in Florida. And then, believe it or not, tore my ACL again.
Same.
So every time I kept it was the same one. Oh. And then finally I ended up, after that, it was crazy, man. Just keep trying to come back. And it just, my knees kept failing me. But then after that, I was playing in a city league just to get back in shape. And I was in the backcourt and the guy picked up his dribbles. So I like planted and cutted to come back and get the ball, and it just gave out, man. So like, it was like 3 non-contact ones. And, it was a really difficult time for me because growing up, it was kind of my identity as, basketball player. And once I wasn't able to play in college, it was devastating to me. And really, I had no idea what direction I wanted to go. I think I changed my major in college like 4 times. But it was like psychology to criminal justice to kinesiology to sports medicine. Like I just really didn't know where I wanted to go. And that's when I watched a Micah Lancaster video and found out that the player development coach, skills trainer, whatever you want to call it, was actually a career path. And it wasn't an easy one, still not an easy one. You really have to grind. And I ended up meeting a really great guy. His name is Bret Hart Sr. And I'm like getting into like my whole story here.
Go. Yeah, you got to.
It's just kind of flowing, man. I'm going to go with it. But so I ended up meeting this guy, Bret Hart Sr., and he had a 9-year-old son who was going on 10, and his name was Bret Jr. And I was training Bret Jr. one day, and I guess Bret Jr. went home and told his dad how much he loved the training session, and he just couldn't stop ranting and raving about it. And then the next week, his father, Bret Sr., came to the training session. And then after the session, he came up to me and he's like, introduced himself and said, I'd like to meet with you. Can you meet at my corporate office? And he's a very, very successful businessman, great guy. But so I ended up meeting him there, and he kind of painted this picture like, look, we could do this together. I'll kind of be your mentor. I will teach you all about just business and kind of how to run things. And, you could run this middle school AU program and then also train. And so and that was about 9 years ago. So I ended up running a middle school AU program. We called ourselves the Ventura Vipers. And that was from 4th to 8th grade. But then, once you're out of middle school and moving into high school, it's a whole different animal. It becomes all about recruiting, and, there's the shoe money circuits and teams and all different levels within that. So that was something that I really wasn't prepared to do, because training at the same time started to really take off. And I started to have all these great opportunities, to do pre-draft stuff, to work with pretty high level clients. And so what I ended up doing was going to this program called Powerhouse Hoops. And that was ran by a few guys, one of them being John Ortega that I mentioned earlier. And they're now called AZ Select, but they played on the Under Armour circuit. I coached for a little bit in 8th grade, going into 9th grade. I coached on the Adidas circuit with Team Harden. And so for about 3 years, I coached on the AAU circuit. And then after that, I ended up just kind of retiring, I should say, from coaching, because the training opportunities were just too much. I remember being in a hotel in Atlanta, and I got a phone call from this agent he's like, hey, I have so-and-so in town. And he was a well-known NBA player. And he's like, can you train him? And I was like, oh, like I'm coaching AAU ball, man. I can't. And it killed me, so I think it ran its course, and I kind of passed a lot of the players that have been with me for many years. They transitioned into that Powerhouse program and played for Ortega and those guys. And, I still supported them. I mean, hey, I'm in Utah right now watching some of those guys play in their first prep team tournament. So, yeah, it's been an incredible journey, but the guy, Bret Hart Sr. he was crucial in my success and development. As well as my business partner, Brendan Lavender, who he played basketball at U of A. Mm-hmm. He went to Mesa Mountain View with me, won some state championships with me. He's like my best friend. Like we kind of were like the two-headed monster, starting 9 years ago. And he's still doing it. We're still rolling to this day, man.
Man, it's a journey. And what stood out to me probably was the kind of getting that satisfaction of training for the first time, getting that compliment of this is making an impact on a person. How was that feeling different than, you know, just the normal playing basketball and hitting a shot and winning a game feeling?
I mean, it's way different. You know, I miss playing. I really just miss the competition, the preparation. I really miss that, but I fell out of love with playing the game. I kind of had to, because, you know, I had my knees weren't going to allow me to do it. But I kind of fell out of love with that. And, you know, since I started seeing the game in a different light, you know, through player development, I realized that I could make an even bigger impact in the world and in the basketball world specifically, by being a coach and a player development coach. And it's crazy. I get texts every once in a while throughout the years from clients or from parents, you know, that like thank me for what I've done for them, for their child. And, you know, and like, those are like the best texts to receive, you know, just knowing that you really impacted, that you poured into someone else and helped them. Because I remember people that did that for me, and I'll never, till the day I die, I'll never forget them, you know? So, I mean, I think a coach, a trainer, they impact more lives every year than the average person. I mean, it like a tremendous amount more. And I think sometimes they forget that, you know, sometimes they can be a little selfish, and maybe they're focused a little more on themselves as far as like the direction they're going and their status and them, where if you could learn to pour into the player, you know, while continuing to evolve your mind, like there's got to be a bit of selfishness as far as you got to prioritize yourself and you're make that time to learn the game. But I mean, when you pour into others and when you're constantly helping others, good things happen. You know, I realized that, and this is one of the things that Brett Sr. told me for so many years. Like if you just do things the right way, even though it may be really, really hard, but if you do things the right way, like it's going to pay off. I think one of my training philosophies is to trust the process. I think there is just this, like, the players these days, they're so impatient. You know, they want immediate results. They want instant gratification. They think that they could, me specifically, they think they could come work with me for 2 sessions and all of a sudden they're going to be Nico. They're going to be all, you know, an elite player. And, you know, I tell them all the time, like, you have to be patient. There's almost this, I'd say, anxious patience where, like, you wake up and of course, when you're younger, you have to go to school and handle all that stuff. You have to be great at that. But you're just anxious to get in the gym and work on your game and evolve and work on yourself. But then also, you can't expect the results immediately. You're patient. You're trusting that, okay, all these days of work, these hours of work, they're just going to compound and just build up. And when the time comes, I'm going to be ready. I'm going to be prepared. And, you know, that's the same strategy that I've used. I mean, there were days when my training partner, Brendan, and I, you know, of course we had to pay like court rental. We had the rent to pay for that. And, you know, if we had to pay $100 for court rentals, there's a night where we had one kid show up for a $25 session. So essentially we paid that kid $75 to train with us.
Right.
And there were so many days like that. And, you know, at first we're kind of like, man, this is bullshit. Like, well, you know, but like, then we realized like, we have to do more. We have to figure it out. Like we thought we're working hard. We thought we were being smart with the way we were advertising our training. We weren't. Like we have to be better. And even though we've grown as trainers and our brand is bigger, still to this day, we take the same approach. Like we're really never satisfied.
It's, you know, you're right. I would 100% agree with you with your point on making an impact on people and coaches, trainers, people like that being up there as far as numbers. Because I just remember what it was like being a kid and being a young athlete and what the camaraderie of the team did for me, but then also, you know, what the coaches could do for me as far as, you know, I always remember my coach making me say yes, sir, and no, sir. He would make the other teachers report in if the football players are saying yes, sir, and no, sir, and just something little like that. You know, it doesn't even have to be within the sport. It's just a life thing.
Yeah.
Where the kids are going to be more prone to be open to that and take that serious. And so people like you, people like people I know in Seattle, they impact so many people's lives day to day. And like I said in the beginning, you know, it's fun, it's basketball, but there's a real true like meaning behind it. And it's like worth it. You know, like sports, that's what sports is worth to me, is that connection and that brotherhood and that pull the next man up kind of thing. You mentioned Nico.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You mentioned Nico, and you've been working with him since he's 13, 14?
Yeah, 13. He moved to Phoenix from Salt Lake City.
Okay. So what do you remember about him that's the same to this day, and what has changed about him as a player, as a person?
I mean, my first thought of him was like, damn, this kid doesn't move like your typical redhead. The same thing everybody thinks. You're just like, he's got swagger. He's got a lot of swagger. Like all the redhead kids that I knew growing up, I mean, they could still be talented, but like they were either, you know, a 6'8" big guy or a spot up shooter. I'm like, this kid moves different, but and he still does to this day. You know, he's a great kid, just a great person. If you were to take a lot of guys that kind of went through what he went through as far as the early age stardom, a lot of them are kind of too cool for school. You know what I mean? And they feel like they're above everybody else. And you know, that's not Nico. He's still humble. And you know, that's a huge credit to, you know, the way he was raised, his parents. But yeah, he's going to impact millions and millions of lives. I mean, he's already the type of kid that'll, you know, people ask him for autographs and pictures all the time, and he's great with that. You know, he came into the gym the other day, and my training partner had, you know, his son was there, who's like, he's going on 5, maybe 6 now, and he was overshooting on the side hoop, and like Nico went straight over to him and said hi and was like showing him a few things, and you know, so he's that type of person, you know, just a leader, and you know, there's times where on the court, like, he could be a killer. You know, he's not a cupcake, but he also understands the importance of kind of giving back, helping others, and emotionally, he's like that.
How do you think you've grown as a trainer working with him over the years?
I've always had to bring it. You know, as his game has been evolving and growing, you know, going from middle school to high school, Under Armour circuit to him going to McDonald's, All-Americans, Hoop Summit, going and playing in Italy, going to U of A, and then now going to the NBA. I can't ever be comfortable. I feel like if he's growing, like I have to grow with him. And, I've had to, when he was transitioning into college, I had to learn more about the college game. And then, even I knew that he was going to be a one and done. And so I started researching and learning more about the NBA game. So I'd be prepared when the time comes, and the time is now, where he's preparing for the draft, the pre-draft process. So iron sharpens iron, man.
And how do you think the training has been different, we're like refining his skills up to the draft, or that's what I think of anyway, like what has that process been like, different from, your usual sessions with him?
Well, as like I said earlier, we kind of started out with a more innovative style. Like I said, there's a lot of cones, tennis balls, 2-ball stuff, that I think was very, very beneficial at the young age. But like once he kind of graduated from that, then it started to become more about being stronger with your dribble, finishing stronger, footwork, posture, making shots consistently, not just making shots. And that's kind of where we are now. And it used to be where he'd go to an AAU tournament on the weekend and he'd come back and be like, man, like I didn't do that well on pick and roll, or I didn't shoot the 3-ball very well, or I made all my catch and shoot threes, but off the dribble, I just wasn't hitting. And so that week in training, we would hit heavily on those parts. And it was just that pattern for years and years. And, then he goes to U of A, and he didn't have the season that he wanted. I think he wanted to play better, but he realized that, hey, there's certain parts of my game that I really need to tighten up. And I saw the same thing, as did his father. And that's what we've been doing. We've been working on his shooting consistency. We've been working on his crafty finishes, but then also powerful finishes, taking contact. We've been watching a ton of film on damn near every single point guard in the NBA, and a ton of pick and roll. Right? It's you look at it analytically, any point guard in the NBA, and 40 to 50% of their play types are pick and roll. That's the offense. That's in every offense now for the most part. So it's just been 6-7 months. I think I looked yesterday, and we're on week 25, where normally the pre-draft process is 6 to 8 weeks. So, due to COVID, of course, it's been altered, but I'm anxious for this draft day to come. But I also know that all the work that he's putting in is going to pay off. He's going to be ready. And, every guy that does pre-draft, you want to do your best to prepare them on the court, off the court, and all that for the NBA. But there's nothing like actually showing up on the first day of training camp. And I can't simulate that. That's something that you just kind of have to experience. You could have players that have played in the NBA talk to him and tell him, hey, this is how it's going to be. This is what you should do, but it's not until you actually show up and experience it that you truly understand what it's going to take to get to the next level, and not just get to the next level, but stay there. That's the hardest part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing is making it to the NBA. The other thing is staying in the NBA past 3 years.
Yes.
Or whatever. There's a lot of great players that couldn't do that for one reason or another. So it's got to be exciting. It's such a unique, just in the world, a job, leading up to it. Like, am I going to, it's like nothing else. So it's interesting to get an insight on how you prepare for that, and, your role in it and everything. And as we kind of start to wrap up, when you think about training, and either, you know, the Ventura Basketball Academy, all of that stuff, what are you excited for next? Like, what's upcoming? What are you, you know, obviously with Nico and the NBA, is there anything, you know, different that you're excited to do, or your goals or anything like that, with you or the academy?
I've had clients in the NBA. Obviously it's really exciting that a kid that I've been training for 7 going on 8 years is finally going to get to that point, you know, so that's really rare and unique in its own way. But like we talked earlier about just impacting others and impacting the game of basketball as a whole. And I feel like every day I'm learning something new, and I'm excited for the next chance that I get to run a skills clinic. I'm excited for the clients that I get to work with, you know, tomorrow and next week and next month, because I just want to, I always tell guys, like, you can't be perfect in the game of basketball. Like, there's no such thing as perfection. The legends of the game have never played a perfect game. But like, I also tell them, you want to strive to be perfect with an understanding that the game is imperfect. Like, so it's kind of a weird way of thinking, but it's like, hey, I want to come into the training session and make every shot. Like, hey, the third shot you take, you miss. Like, you don't give up. You don't stop. You're like, okay, why'd I miss it? How'd I miss it? All right, I gotta make this adjustment, make that adjustment. I gotta feel it a little more. And then, but it's just like a song that you put on repeat. It's the same thing over and over, you know? So I'm, you know, to get back to the point is, like, I'm excited about just impacting more players. I'm excited I have a lot of guys, like one kid, for example, Brett Jr. that I mentioned earlier, Brett Senior's son. You know, he started out with me when he was 9 years old. He just committed to DePaul in the Big East. And like, if you would have told me when he was 9 years old that this skinny, scrawny little white kid, no one would have guessed it. I would have slapped someone if they told me, hey, he's going to play in the Big East. I'd have been like, I don't want to be around you. Like, what are you talking about? But like, it just, seeing that happen, like, makes me realize how just consistent hard work, like, so many failures, so much struggle, you know, through tears, through injury, through just those times where you're just like, you doubt yourself, but you know what? You have the right people in your circle, and you just, something comes into you, and you like, tomorrow, next day, I'm going to keep going. Like seeing that happen is really, really inspiring to me. How you could take someone who at first glance has no business, like no one on the planet would assume that, hey, they're going to make it to this level, and they do. You know, so you could never underestimate the heart of someone that just has that will to succeed and does things the right way and perseveres. And so, you know, that kind of stuff that happens along the way, that's my motivation, man.
It's a life well lived, impacting people and doing it with basketball. So shout out to you. It's makes me feel good to know that it wasn't just Seattle to have special people like that. There's other people that are in the greater basketball community that have those same motivations and see it the same way and understand it the same way. When you think about the people you've trained, you know, even thinking about your family, all the people that have been there for your journey, I just want to kind of open up the floor to you to say anything you'd like to them, the people out there listening. Just kind of give you the floor.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously my mother and father, you know, they created me, they raised me, they're forever going to be number one. You know, Brett Senior, I mentioned, has been huge role in my success as a man, as a business owner, as a trainer. God, there's honestly so many people that have impacted me. You got like 45 minutes?
Yeah, right.
No, but I mean, there's like early in my career, a guy, Scott Hoffman, that his son Caden, I trained him for many years. He's playing in college now, and he allowed me and invited me to be the assistant coach for his junior sons team, and introduced me to a lot of great people. Nico's father, Pace Mannion, and and his wife Gaia, Nico's mother Gaia. But I mean, Pace has been, he's a little bit older than me. He just turned 60 the other day, but he's still young for 60. But he's been huge in my success and my growth, and he's always told people about my training, and he's given me, him and his wife Gaia have given me a ton of credit for Nico's success. And as a player development coach, I always feel guilty and I feel awkward taking credit for a player's success. Like they're the talent. I'm part of their circle, and someone that just steps in and helps, but it's them at the end of the day that make all those choices and decide to listen to what I say. But I mean, those are the guys that have really, they're, like I said earlier, they're part of the small circle. They're part of the village, and I would not be who I am, without them. And I think another thing, and this is like aside from basketball, but as guys, like, we date and we have a love life, and that's an important thing is finding that partner who, like, for a basketball trainer, our hours are very off, and there's a lot of travel at times, and it's stressful, just like any job, and I've had my share of girlfriends, significant others, throughout my training career. But I mentioned earlier my fiance, Karina, who, she's incredible, man. And like, she never guilts me for spending hours at home watching film and for being gone for weeks, training and all that. Like, she's very, very, very supportive. And, she always asks how my clients are, and she wants to be part of it. So, that's, she's a huge part of what I've been able to do as well.
There it is. It's Vaughn Compton in his own words, letting you know. So I again, thank you for coming on. Thank you for telling your story. Thank you for helping me kind of understand not only about the Arizona basketball scene, but just about trainers in general. And then, of course, the impact that they have. So again, thank you. I'm looking forward to getting to know the basketball scene and other people around. But lastly, if the people want more, where can they follow you?
They can follow me on Instagram at Vaughn, VAUGHN, _ Compton, COMPTON. I appreciate you having me on, Jeremy. Yeah,
I appreciate you coming on. One of the great names also. That's just a fantastic name. Vaughn Compton, that's a legendary name, I have to say it. So again, thank you.
Appreciate it, man.
We'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
Awesome. Talk soon.
Oop fans all across community. Check in, never know who you'll see. Subscribe and like, you know the deal. Real life on Mike Jeremy Mills.